I'm Dylighted, and today I'm going to commentate the World 2018 Semifinal Championship game. I'm only going to be commentating the initial settlement placements, but if you'd like to see the entire game, then let me know below. Red is in first position, orange is in second position, white is in third position, and blue is in fourth position. Now, I'd like to note on this board that there are no production point markers, and what I mean by that is you don't get to see that 6 has 5 points, while 5 has 4 points. So as red in first position, the first thing I look at is where are the ore, wheat, and sheeps, because I want a high ore, wheat, sheep ratio. The ideal ore, wheat, sheep ratio is 5 points of ore, 4 points of wheat, and 3 points of sheep. So to get the highest ore, wheat, sheep ratio possible, I know that I'm going to need high ore. So let's break this down and look at the ores. I see that there's only 2 good ores, and they're both on the coast. So this lets me know that both of the ores are going to be relatively competitive to get, and that leads to the conclusion my first settlement has to be on the 6 or 8 ore. So let's first look at the 6 ore. I choose the 693 over the 692. This is because I get a little bit of wheat, and I have wood. And if I point my road to the right, then I can get to the 6-2, which lets me get more ore and get the wood port, since I'm on a 9 wood. So the 693 is a decent spot, but we have to look at where the other ore is, and that's the 8 ore. So there's only 2 good spots for this. So the 2 spots I'm looking at is the 348 and the 810-3. So the 348 satisfies the ideal ore wheat sheep ratio almost perfectly. It gives me 5 points of ore, 3 points of wheat, and 2 points of sheep. So this guarantees me ore, wheat, sheep. And something to look out for is that the wheat is relatively mediocre on this board. Then there is a small fear of getting locked out of wheat. But let's analyze the 8-3-10 first. So if we look at the 8-10-3, this doubles up on the ore, which is really strong. However, the only thing you're missing is wheat. So let's try to look ahead and predict where other people are going to place to see if there's any chance that I'm going to get locked out of wheat. I see the 2-4 wheats, and the only way for me to not get on one of those if 4 settlements place all around that, locking the 4 wheat. And even if that happens, I can still place on the 10-5 wheat. I'm also ignoring the 3 wheat because it's too weak to place on. So in order for me to get locked out of wheat, there needs to be 5 perfect settlements on the 4 wheats, which is relatively unlikely. Therefore, I feel confident by placing the 8-10-3 that I won't get locked out of wheat for my second settlement. This will give me an even better ratio than placing on the 3-4-8. Therefore, I understand Red's pick on the 3-4-8 for first position. Now for his road, since he's going to be going high ore wheat sheep, he's sacrificing his road building production, so he can't be greedy and place his road somewhere that's going to get cut off. That's why the road has to be pointed towards the coast. Now second position, orange, I'm still looking for the high ore. Since the 3-10-8 has been taken, the only good ore spots left is the 4-8 and 3-6. This lets me know that if I don't place on the ore now, then I'm going to get locked out of ore. Knowing the importance of ore, I have to place on one of the strong ores. Now, placing on the 4-8 ore seems just a little bit too weak for me. That's only 8 points of production on your first pick. I don't like that as much. But if you look at the 3-6-9, this gives you 11 points of production, with 2 points of wheat. And you can point your road down to the right, looking to double up on that 6 ore and get on the wood port, with the 9 wood complementing the wood port. And because of that, I agree with Orange's pick on the 3-6-9. Now as third position, with 2 strong ore spots taken up, you have to really start looking at the wood bricks. So if you look at the bricks, you see that there's only 8 points of brick on this board, where the only strong brick is that 6 brick right there. Now let's look at the wood. So if you look at the wood, you see that there's an 8 wood, 2 9 woods, and 11 woods. And if you add all the production points together, it's a total of 15 points of wood compared to the 8 points of brick. So because you need wood and brick at a 1-to-1 wood-brick ratio, this lets me know that wood is going to be less valued on this board compared to brick. And getting on that 6 brick is essential. Another thing I'm considering is the 4-8. This lets me get the last ore spot with wheat along with the ore port. But the issue of this is looking at the competitors. So if you look at orange, he's on the 6 ore and he's set up to get on that 6-2 ore, which essentially gets him his second ore spot, which gives him even more ore. Now let's look at red. Since you're sharing the 8 ore with red, but red has an extra 10 ore, you're probably going to lose on the large army race in buying development cards because both orange and red are going to have stronger ores production than you are. Now, white as third position places in the 8-4-10. So here's why I think white chose the 8-4-10. So if you look at it, so white takes the strongest wood, which is the 8 wood on this board. Since he knows that the 6 brick won't be locked up, that fourth position will take 1 spot on the brick, and there's a very, very low chance that fourth position will lock up that 6 brick. So by white taking the strongest wood, he knows that he's going to get the strongest brick, which sets him up for a pretty strong chance of getting longest road. Now white points his road to the right to get to the 8-3, and this makes sense to me because white is trying to increase his production as much as possible. As the wood brick player, aka the road player, you lose the powers of cities without ore. So to increase your production, you have to build on relatively strong spots. Now as fourth position, blue, you get to place twice. I see a sort of creative option, but placing on the 6-3-4 and then placing on the 9-2 with the free road pointed upwards, immediately cutting off orange and going on that wood port with the 6-or. But I think this is really risky, and this also really hurts your city potential. Because when you city up, you want to city up your strongest spots. So after you city up that 6-4-3 spot, citying up the 9-2 or the 6-2 is really weak. So that's why I think that creative option is not a super good play. So blue ends up placing first on the 5-9-10, and then places on the 4-11-6. So this makes sense to me because blue has pointed his road towards a sheep port, and he has in total 7 points of sheep, looking to convert that sheep to the missing ore. And his second settlement on the 11-4-6 makes sense to me also. At first, I was pretty surprised that blue didn't place a settlement on the 6-4-3, getting him 3 tiles of sheep rather than 2. But the 4-6-11 makes sense to me because you start off with the free road, and this is important because whenever you're trying to get to a port that really helps you out, you want to get to that port as soon as possible. So in fourth position, by having a free road, this will allow you to get to that sheep port even faster, which allows you to convert all that sheep to the ore that you're missing. Another reason why I understand the 4-6-11 over the 6-3-4 is because you have 6 points of wood and 5 points of brick. This really challenges white as a contender for longest road. Now let's talk about blue's road. So his first road obviously makes sense pointing towards a sheep port, and his second road pointing towards the coast. Now I think blue was secretly hoping no one would place on the 4-8, as that's a crazy good spot. However, there's a little bit of insurance if someone places on the 4-8, since blue can just build another road, getting on that 3-for-1 11 wood port. Now it's white's turn to pick for his second settlement. So looking at white, because you already have 5 points of wood with the 8 wood, you're sort of forced to place on somewhere on the 6 brick. So let's take a look at the possible spots. Placing on the 6-3-11 makes no sense when you can place on the 6-5-11, which gives you more production. And there's also the option of placing on the 6-5-12. So white does a really surprise move and places on the 6-5-12. This really shocked me. However, I understand why he does it. So I think this is really risky trying to fight blue for the sheep port, especially when blue's second settlement was on that 6-11-4, giving him a free road. So if you place your second settlement on the 6-5-12, this starts you off with 2 sheep and 1 brick. And what you're banking on as white is an 8 to roll in the first 3 rolls, because you act right before blue. And if an 8 does not roll, producing you a wood in the first 3 rolls, this means you get cut off by blue, which is really bad. However, as a wood brick player, you can afford to take a lot more risks, especially when it comes to roads, because your strength is in roads. So if you lose a race, it's not as massive as a loss as the ore wheat sheep player losing a race. This is why that 5-6-12 makes sense. And the reason why white is racing for that sheep port is because white is on 2 sheep spots, that 5 sheep and that 10 sheep. So it makes sense why white wants that spot. Now it comes back to orange at second position, and orange is looking for more wheat, sheep, and brick so it can pair up with the wood. I think the 4-5-11 makes a lot of sense because you're getting more wheat to satisfy your wheat requirement, you're getting sheep, which is something you're missing, and you get a little bit of brick to complement your wood. Now, by placing your road to the right, this allows orange to build a settlement on that 9-11. This will complement that wood port even more later in the future. I'd also like to note as orange, you can place on the 4-8. This allows you to get 10 points of ore, get high wheat, but no sheep. And yes, you can say you can convert that 10 points of ore to sheep, but the concern is you get red a lot of space to work with. So if orange decides to place on the 4-8, then red can take anywhere in the center around that 4 wheat, which is an even stronger complement to his high ore ratio. Also, this leaves you with a lot of useless wood until you get to that wood port. Now finally, red. Like he predicted, there'll still be wheat spots that are open. So let's see a few of these. So there's a 4-8 spot, and then there's a 10-5 spot. So the 10-5 is only 7 points of production compared to the 4-8, which is 8 points of production, but this gives you a little bit more high wheat, and you can get on the wheat port. Another benefit placing on that 10-5 is that whenever you get blocked, it's not super effective. If they block the 5 wheat, well, it's only hitting 1 person. If they block that 10 ore, you still have an 8 ore open. And you also have the benefit of getting on that 3-1 port. Now, let's take a look at the 4-8 spot. So if you place on the 4-8 spot, you automatically start off with an ore port, which is strong, and you get wheat. So by placing the 8 ore spot, this allows you to get 13 points of ore, doubling up on your 8 ore, and you get wheat. So although by placing the 4-8, it gives you quite the skewed ore wheat sheep ratio, you have an excess of ore, which allows you to convert to the resources you need. Another thing to note is by placing the 8-4, the 8 becomes a massive target for the robber, because you're doubled up on that 8 ore and you have an ore port. Another small problem of placing the 8-4 is that your wheat becomes a massive target. Because most people know no wheat equals defeat, I can see the robber juggling between the 4 wheat and the 8 ore. However, red decides to place on the 8-4 ore anyways, with the confidence that he's going to be able to buy enough development cards to defend himself, because he's a heavy or wheat sheep player. Alright, so we're done with placements. So let's get a quick summary of people's strengths and weaknesses. So as red, their strength is or wheat sheep, so they're going to be going for a lot of development cards and cities. Red's goal is to buy a lot of development cards to get largest army and to defend his 8 ore in that 4 wheat spot. His weakness is roads. However, that won't really matter too much because whenever you're the or wheat sheep player, you don't need a lot of road building material. So orange in second position has decent or wheat sheep and a little bit of brick and a decent wood. Orange is what I call the balanced player. He has all 5 resources. However, the issue with Orange's position is that since he's not concentrated on high wood brick and he has less or wheat sheep compared to red, it's going to be difficult for him to secure one of the 2-point bonuses, long road or largest army, since he's not concentrated on a specific one. White in third position, on the other hand, has the highest wood and has the highest brick. His goal is to go for longest road, and is going to try to race for the sheep port in order to convert all that sheep to ore. His advantage is roads, therefore he'd want to go for long road. In fourth position, blue also has strong wood and brick. He too would like to get on that sheep port in order to convert that sheep to ore. His advantage is going for longest road. So let's learn some lessons from these national champions. The first lesson we can learn is that as a port player, your number 1 goal is to get to the port, which is why blue placed on the 6-11-4, knowing that getting to that sheep port is very essential. And if he placed on the 6-4-3, like what I was talking about, then he'd have an even lower chance of beating white to the sheep port. The second lesson we can learn is know your competitors and know what to fight for. So what I mean by this is, you see how third and fourth position did not pick an ore and instead opted to go longest road? Because they understood that if 3 people went for largest army, there'd be a very low chance that they get largest army, and the wood brick player would be able to sneak behind and be able to secure longest road without any competition. Now the last lesson we can learn from these national champions, you can take risks as a wood brick player. So in my last video, I said you want to point your road towards the coast or desert. However, there's a lot more flexibility when you're the wood brick player. And this is because when you're the wood brick player, your strength is in roads, so you can afford to race for the middle or take risks by trying to cut people off and get really good spots, compared to the or wheat sheep player who has a lack of road building, which is why they need to point towards the coast. Following up on that, another exception to that rule is, on your second settlement, if you can predict where other people will place, it's okay to not point your road towards the coast or desert, because if you know that there's going to be a strong spot open inside the middle, why don't you just go for it, since you know no one else is going to place there? So, who do you think has the best chance to win? Now, I'm not going to tell you who wins, because I encourage you to watch the full game. I believe you'll learn a lot from watching these competitive players play. I've linked a playlist in the description below of tournament games that I think that are worth watching. Like always, I encourage discussion. If you think there's a spot where one of these national champions misplayed, then feel free to comment below. I'm curious to hear your responses. I'm Dylighted, and I hope you learned something.